let Iran get nuclear weapons. So I don't think he misled you. You might disagree with him, but you couldn't say he misled you. Did not seek congressional authorization. That's both not true and irrelevant, because there's reporting out, even from liberal sources, saying that President Trump did brief Speaker Johnson and Majority Leader Thune, but also President Trump does not need congressional authorization as the War Powers Act, which allows him to engage in military action for 60 to 90 days. The president is here. He'll be speaking. We'll get his take on it directly.
Nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel. And God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The most impressive aspect of that speech was not anything the president said, though we'll get to that momentarily. It's who he was standing with. Trump didn't show up alone. He's standing there with the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and most crucially, the Vice President, J.D. Vance. The presence of J.D. Vance there is most significant for two reasons. One, because sometimes the vice president is a peripheral figure. It's going back to the earliest days of our country. You'd kind of send the vice president off to go, have lunch and have tea for the administration. He wasn't part of it, really. The Secretary of State was much more important to the administration than, say, the vice president. Some vice presidents are more consequential than others. But Dick Cheney was consequential during the Bush II administration. But J.D. Vance is clearly an active vice president. He's young. President Trump is term limited out, so he's been viewed by many as a successor to Trump. And he's there involved in this. The other reason it's significant is because, at least according to the reporting that's come out, the vice president has been somewhat skeptical of too much military engagement. And so he had a great explainer tweet out just a couple days ago on what's going on in Iran, in which he articulated the situation, I think, perfectly. Namely, it is the position of the United States that we're not going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And two, I'm really skeptical of endless wars in the Middle East. So we don't want to get bogged down in one of those either. And President Trump has shown that he can intervene, including in the Middle East, and not necessarily get bogged down. He showed that in the first administration when he dropped the Moab, for instance, or when he took out Qasem Soleimani, the top Iranian general. So he's shown that you can intervene with the United States military. We are the global hegemon. We do have alliances. We do have security commitments. We do have national objectives. You don't need to get bogged down there for 9 years as we did in Iraq, for instance, or 20 years as we did in Afghanistan. But the fact that reporting is coming out about J.D. Vance means it is all the more significant that he's standing there next to the Secretary of State, who seems a little bit more hawkish. He's a little bit more with the classic of the last 25 years GOP foreign policy. And then Pete Hegseth, who also seems relatively hawkish. The other reason it's significant that those men were standing behind him is because any one of those men could be the successor in 2028. So President Trump famously has not picked a successor for 2028. Hate to bring up electoral politics when we're talking about war and peace, but it's on everyone's mind in Washington. It's on the minds of a lot of voters. And you know it's on the minds of all the men who are standing up there this evening. President Trump has said, no, I'm not going to look. JD's great, Marco's great, other people are great. So you've got three men here in three really crucial positions, all of whom could succeed Trump in just 3 years. Keeping them all on the team, all united. If there are ideological disagreements among the team, we're going to make sure we're going to bring them all together. Trump has done this from the beginning. This is, to the point we were talking about before the president spoke, this is what Trump is preternaturally gifted at, which is creating alliances, creating coalitions that did not exist before, bringing together opposites, bringing together on trade, protectionists and free traders. Both of them are in his administration. You can't quite tell where he's going to land. Bringing in people who are war hawks, people who are doves. You don't quite know where he's going to land. And people didn't know exactly where he was going to land until this evening on Iran. I love the comment Trump made. He said, I want to thank, he's giving this prepared speech. It's a good speech. It was very well written. Pithy, which was important, I think. And then the one moment where he seems to go a little extemporaneous, he says, I want to thank God. I want to thank God. We love you, God. It's very humanizing. I think that the president has clearly gotten some religion or some more religion since he was almost assassinated in Butler, Pennsylvania. 1/20th of an inch, prevented his brains from being splattered on the stage. There was another time that I was joining all of you from this studio unexpectedly. And so he thanks God as he is admitting this could escalate into a serious war. And it's not even implicit. He made that quite explicit. He said, look, we hit targets tonight, including the toughest target to hit. The Fordow nuclear facility was way underground. The only way to get at it would have been with bunker busters and B-2 bombers, which reportedly is what was used in this operation, or with a tactical nuclear weapon, which was not going to be used for a plethora of reasons, not the least of which is it would lead to the normalization of tactical nukes and to massive nuclear proliferation. So I think the Trump administration was very wise not to consider that, if the reporting is accurate, which I suspect it is. So he says, look, we hit the toughest target, but we have a lot of other targets. We have a lot of other targets we can hit. We want peace now. We don't want to escalate this. We're going to leave you a carrot. We gave you the stick tonight. We're going to leave you a carrot. And the way that I'm reading that is, we, the United States, are not going to push for full-on regime change in Iran. Trump mentioned the state of Israel a lot tonight because this was primarily an Israeli objective, though preventing Iran's nuclear weapons has been an American objective for decades as well. But Israel was the nation that faced the existential threat from the nuclear weapons. The United States had a little bit more distance. So we had the strategic objective, but it wasn't quite as immediate. The Israeli objective now clearly is regime change in Iran. Get rid of the Ayatollah. I think it was the defense minister, one of the top Israeli politicians, said the Ayatollah can no longer be permitted to exist. Hard to be clearer than that. Meanwhile, from what Trump is saying, it is not clear to me that his objective is decapitating the Iranian regime. And I think he is wise to be restrained, because it's very easy to say that the mullahs are awful and terrible and bad, and they chant death to America. They do all of those things. But then, of course, the next question is, who's going to replace them? There are some contenders. Some people are saying Reza Pahlavi, whose father was the Shah who was deposed in the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Okay. You know why people say that? Because he's the only Iranian they've ever heard of. Okay. Can anyone make me a plausible case that the Shah would be able to go in immediately and take control? And I hope so. Look, that'd be great. I don't know. The Shah of Iran, his dad, was a great ally of the United States. Apparently, Reza Pahlavi is quite friendly to the West, too. So would that it were so simple, that'd be great. But it seems to me we need to have a little circumspection and restraint here. Iran is a real country. Likewise, there's reporting out now that the Ayatollah has named a successor. So the Ayatollah, this was before President Trump's speech, is clearly thinking, if it's not the Americans, it's going to be the Israelis, but someone's going to kill me. Which seems to suggest that Iran is a bit more of an orderly country than was certainly Afghanistan or even Iraq. It would be a colossal endeavor to engage in regime change in Iran. And with Americans on both sides of the aisle totally sick of endless wars in the Middle East and nation building in particular in the Middle East. People forget now, George W. Bush ran for president in the year 2000 against nation building before September 11th. With all of that, I suspect there are going to be a lot of powers now that the Iranian nuclear threat has been neutralized. There are going to be a lot of people saying, okay, now President Trump, pull back a little bit. You might start to see a divergence of the United States perspective and the Israeli perspective, despite the fact that obviously the two went hand in hand quite tightly on this operation. Now the political question is going to be, do we return to what the parties were like before Trump? Two ways this could go. Either Trump could get what he wants here. And Trump has played foreign policy very, very well. So the people who are panicking on the right or the people who are attacking him on the left, I think you got to look at history here. Trump had a more successful foreign policy than any president in my lifetime. Maybe the rival would be George H.W. Bush. But he had very, very successful foreign policy, maybe better than Bush Sr., certainly better than Clinton, Bush II, Obama, Biden. And so, he's got a lot of credibility. He's earned, as the vice president pointed out, he's earned some trust on these issues. So it could be the case that 3 weeks from now, we forget all about this. That could happen. You remember, it's how long has it been now? 5 months that we've had this second term, and we were told the stock market was going to completely implode. Everyone's 401ks were going to go bankrupt. We were going to go to war on a few other fronts. Everything was going to fall apart. Global trade was going to stop. Gas was going to go through the roof, blah, blah, blah. None of it ever happened. And all these people, Trump called them panicans because they were just panicking over everything. It didn't matter. People totally forgot about it. Do you remember when the bond market dropped? Maybe not. Probably not. So it could be the case that this massive attack on Iran, which might have wiped out the nuclear facilities, it's unclear. President Trump didn't mention during that speech just how effective it was. Seems like it was effective, but we don't know. That's going to play out over time. Frankly, the United States might not know the full scope of how effective it was yet. But either it's totally great, effective, we're just going to forget about it, or this is going to embroil us further in a war in the Middle East. There might be some kind of terror attack. Now, again, this would have been the opportunity to hit Iran because the way that Iran terrorizes its enemies is not directly usually, but through proxies. So terror groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, all of whom have been weakened, if not outright destroyed, by the State of Israel and by the United States over the course of the recent war in Israel and Gaza. So this would have been the opportunity. That said, what happens if we get a terror attack in the United States? That drags us further into war with Iran. That really does threaten the Trump agenda, which is mostly domestic. Most of the reason I think people elected Trump is mass deportations, is fixing the economy, is getting all the crazy woke stuff out of schools and out of our culture, returning to common sense. Little bit foreign policy, but I think it was mostly a domestic policy election. So there's a real political risk to Trump that if we become too embroiled in this war, it could derail the agenda, which is exactly what happened to George W. Bush. People forget George W. Bush ran on domestic issues. We're going to restore the dignity of this country. We're going to restore dignity to the Oval Office after the sex scandal of Bill Clinton. We're going to reform Social Security. That was one of the big issues in the 2000 campaign. Al Gore ran against. I said we need a lockbox. We were talking about Social Security. That completely went out the window after September 11th, and especially after the war in Iraq. So it's a precarious moment. And then the political question will be, okay, are the political parties going to return to what they were pre-Trump, or is Trump going to keep the coalition together? He's done a very good job of keeping MAGA together, and MAGA and America First are Trump's movement. He did it. Those phrases had been used in the past. America First was used by Charles Lindbergh. Make America Great Again was used by Ronald Reagan and I think Richard Nixon. But I'm talking about the political movement, the actual thing, was Trump. So he calls the shots. And he's pulling in people who you might not expect. John Fetterman has tweeted out, as I've long maintained, this was the correct move by POTUS. So he's lauding Trump for bombing Fordow. Iran is the world's leading sponsor of terrorism and cannot have nuclear capabilities. I'm grateful for and salute the finest military of the world. This is another political nuance that's going on right now, which is if you log on to X, you are going to see the vast majority of people totally opposed to this action in the Middle East. Some of us are skeptical of involvement in the Middle East, even before Twitter, but especially on X, you're going to see a ton of skepticism. Probably outright hostility to the State of Israel, probably outright hostility to Trump, including from the right, probably outright hostility to any military intervention in Iran. And yet, if you poll people, not just on the internet, but in real life, in physical life, stopping Iran from getting a bomb is a mainstream, vast majority popular view. Even supporting the State of Israel, which is a contentious issue, even that, very popular when you include all generations, when you include all demographics, when you include all parts of the country. Peace through strength, a phrase like that Trump loves, is very, very popular. Obviously, it's been popular since Reagan. So, and actually since Goldwater, I suppose. So I think for a lot of people who are not super online, who don't read about these things and all the debates and the political obscure monikers, the fights between the paleocons and the neocons and the neo-paleocons and the paleo-neocons and the this and the that, the neo-reactionaries and the paleo-reactionaries, I don't know, whatever it is. The people who just kind of go about their daily lives and for whom politics is about 30 minutes a day. I think this could play well. The only question is what comes next, which is why it's so important for Trump to have that show of unity from the administration. He did not pick those people at random. He could have had the chairman of the Joint Chiefs behind him instead of the Secretary of State. He didn't need to have the Secretary of State there. Certainly didn't need to have the Vice President there. There are a lot of other people from the administration. He could have had the Secretary of Homeland Security there. Since Homeland Security is obviously going to be heightened, there's already reports out NYPD is deploying a bunch of extra resources. I'm sure police departments in cities around the country are going to be doing that. Because the way Iran is going to hit back, if Iran does hit back, is not going to be by flying the Iranian Air Force. It's not going to be by deploying the Iranian Navy. It's going to be through a terrorist, probably in an American city. So you are going to see some fear, and you're going to see a lot of hawks beating the war drums for regime change in Iran. But of course, that is not contingent on what happened tonight. That would not be contingent on a terror attack. That has been something that has been building for a long, long time. And I mentioned this in my first reaction video to the news right when it broke. Whatever your feelings on Trump's actions in Iran tonight, you have to recognize this has been building for a long time. I was reading, I think it was ABC's coverage of this, and ABC News slipped into its coverage a little line. They said, the bombs, the weapons that were used in destroying these facilities were developed specifically to destroy these facilities. Now, we've known that these facilities exist. The international community has since 2009. The United States intelligence community probably has known long before that. Which means that what happened tonight was not some impulsive decision from Trump. AOC had such a stupid reaction. She said, the president's disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers. First of all, good grief. Let's just take that, because she has other dumb things she said. But let's just take that for a second. So it's a grave violation of the Constitution. How so? Because, well, she explained, because it violates congressional war powers. AOC is apparently unfamiliar with an act of Congress, which is the War Powers Act, which grants the president as commander-in-chief, if it were not clear enough already, it as a legislative matter grants him the explicit right to deploy the United States military for up to 60 days, really 90 days, because it includes another 30 days for withdrawal, without congressional authorization. Neither Trump, nor Obama, nor any president of any party would need congressional authorization to do what Trump did tonight, or to do what Barack Obama did during the Osama bin Laden raid, or to make any of these military actions. That is just completely, I like to think that AOC is just lying here. I'm not saying the girl's a Rhodes Scholar, but I think she must know. She must have at least heard from someone who read the Constitution, who knows anything about the law, that the president actually does not need congressional authorization to engage in a military operation like this. But anyway, if she doesn't know, that is freshman dorm room 101 political debate. That is Reddit tier nonsense, completely ridiculous. But then the next thing she says is ridiculous too, for a different reason. She says, he has impulsively risked launching a war that may ensnare us for generations. So I'm quite skeptical of American involvement in Iran. You might have noticed I haven't been beating the war drum, and I have been promoting perspectives that have urged restraint. Not in some ideological, I'm anti-war in all cases kind of way. As a matter of practice and prudence, just thought, sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Actually, we've been told that Iran's on the brink of a nuclear weapon for 45 years now. Maybe we can slow walk this thing. So I am sympathetic, actually, to the point she's making here. I'm sympathetic to the voices who were advocating restraint. And we might get relative restraint, depending on what happens next. But when she says he has impulsively risked launching a war, lady, these weapons were built years, if not decades ago, for this operation, for the Fordow facility. Impulsive? This is so much bigger than one night or 1 week or one administration. Because, and people aren't going to want to hear this. She says one more dumb thing, which we'll get to in 1 second. But people are not going to want to hear this because they like to think that we have absolute power over the destiny of our country. We, the people, through our votes at the ballot box. They're not going to like what's going to sound anti-democratic. Nations have grand strategic objectives and operations that extend well beyond presidential administrations. What happened today has been in the works for a very long time. I'm not telling you anything you don't know if you paid any attention. First of all, Trump's been saying it for a decade. But the Democrats, to some degree, too, and the Bushy Republicans, to some degree, too, and the people who run our foreign policy, had to some degree, too. The wonks and the bureaucrats and the think tankers and all the rest of them. and apparently the defense contractors who built this weapon. This has been building for a long time because we're a great power. We're the global hegemon. There are global coalitions, and we have allies. Obviously, much has been said of the American-Israeli alliance, but we're also allies with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia ain't weeping tonight that Iran's nuclear facility's out, because if Iran did attain a nuclear weapon, let's just say the intelligence was right. Obviously, Trump was convinced by the intelligence that Iran was close enough to a nuclear weapon that it involved us going in. I wonder, it seemed to me more likely that the reason that there was such a push for war right now was not because Iran was on the brink of a nuclear weapon, but because Israel had done a very good job of eliminating all of Iran's proxies, and Iran was super weak, and this was the apotheosis of that war. That's what I sort of assumed, and so I assumed the objective was regime change more than it was stopping the nuclear program. Regardless, though, we have other allies. Turkey, they're sort of an ally. They're a NATO ally since the 1950s. Even places like, Bahrain certainly, but what about Qatar maybe? There are these places where you think, they're kind of on our side. They don't really want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. So that's what's playing out. Meanwhile, you have Iran is buddies with Russia and China, major geopolitical adversaries, North Korea, Venezuela. And so they're just kind of teams and they're alliances, and that's how this happens. The one thing it was not, to bring it back to AOC's ridiculous tweet, the one thing that this action in Iran was not is impulsive. And then she concludes, it is absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment. Trump eating a taco bowl with his fork in the wrong hand, that's grounds for impeachment to these people. How is it absolutely and clearly, tell me, absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment? Can you tell me that? There is a legal predicate for impeachment. There's a legal requirement. High crimes and misdemeanors. What was the high crime and misdemeanor? That he, as commander-in-chief, wielded the American military to achieve a long-standing American strategic objective, like it or not. That he fulfilled his rights under the War Powers Resolution. What is it? Totally ridiculous. Senator Cruz has a statement out. It says, quote, I commend our pilots and service members, our intelligence personnel, President Trump and his national security staff on tonight's successful and critical operation. The prospect of the Iranian regime acquiring nuclear weapons represents the most acute immediate threat to, hold on, they lost it. I'm going to read it straight from there. My prompter is dead. I don't know, maybe the Iranians are attacking the prompter. This is from Senator Cruz. The prospect of the Iranian regime acquiring nuclear weapons represents the most acute immediate threat to America and our allies. When the Ayatollah chants death to America, he means it, and the reason he is building nuclear weapons is because he intends to use them. President Trump has consistently and unequivocally stated that those threats cannot be countered without dismantling the Iranian regime's enrichment capacity. The president and his negotiators spent 2 months exploring whether the regime would agree to a negotiated settlement that met America's national security needs. At the end of that period, Iranian regime officials declared that instead of agreeing to a deal, they would open a new enrichment facility, install more advanced centrifuges. Okay, so there's a little bit of information, which is not surprised. Obviously, Senator Cruz is totally on board with what President Trump has done here. Senator Cruz has been a little more hawkish on Iran for a long time. He has, as he says here, taken the death to America chants quite seriously. And so you've got Trump and Cruz, even though they fought a little bit in that 2016 primary, they are completely simpatico on this point and on a lot of other points. But what Cruz is pointing out here is something that a lot of people suspected from Trump. Namely, Trump said, you got 60 days, Iran. You gotta give me what I want. Namely, you will not create a nuclear weapon. And Iran said no. And I get why Iran said no. Because Iran remembers the case of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. When we said to Gaddafi, hey, give up your nuclear program and we'll let you stay in power. And he gave up his nuclear program, and then we took him out. and so it was a horrible decision by the Obama administration and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And so, it helped get us to this point today where Iran said, well, I can't give up my nuclear program because that's going to guarantee that I'm not going to remain in power. So Iran said, no, we're not going to come to a deal. And then, as Cruz points out, he says, well, Trump, then day 61, we were ready to roll. And Cruz goes further, says, rather than agree to a deal, they opened a new enrichment facility. So it was clear this was not going to work. Diplomacy was not going to work. So he concludes, after that declaration, our Israeli allies launched a preemptive attack against the regime and its nuclear infrastructure, which was enormously successful, but could not disable the nuclear activities at Fordow, an underground enrichment bunker built into a mountain, which was legitimized by the catastrophic Obama-Iran nuclear deal. As long as Iran was able to access and conduct activities at Fordow, they could still rush to build a nuclear arsenal. Tonight's actions have gone far in foreclosing that possibility and countering the apocalyptic threat posed by an Iranian nuclear arsenal. Now, the wording is very careful here. And I know that my friend, Senator Cruz, is an extremely intelligent person and very, very good with words. So the line, I haven't spoken to him about this, so I'm just reading the statement. Tonight's actions have gone far in foreclosing that possibility. It still remains unclear if we completely eliminated the Fordow facility. I don't know if new reporting has come in yet, but since the time that I've been on air with you all, and since the time that we've been reading these comments and hearing the president's remarks, it remains unclear. And as I've mentioned earlier, U.S. intelligence might not know yet. That remains unclear. But in any case, there are going to be a lot of people cheering this on. Outside of the very online political circles, most people don't like Iran, and most people broadly like the state of Israel, and most people like Trump. They just kind of follow the leader, and Trump, they trust Trump's gut on these things. So you remember Trump came out, and what was that? The other day at the White House, do we have the clip of this? President Trump was asked by a reporter if he was going to strike Iran, and he's standing there in front of a bunch of guys wearing hard hats. This was his answer.
You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that...
Nobody knows what I'm going to do. And that was 3 days ago or something like that? And I love he's standing there. He's with these guys in hard hats. Hey, get a load of this, guys. You want to? Oh, yeah, let me give you the coordinates. Let me give you the exact time. You don't know what I'm going to do. And Trump, I don't care if you're AOC calling for impeachment. I don't care if you're Marco Rubio standing directly behind the man, totally in support. Trump pulled this off beautifully. Beautifully. There were no leaks out of the Pentagon, no leaks. You had major news outlets, including friendly news outlets, including, I think it was Fox, was on cable, obviously very generally pro-Trump, though he has fights with them from time to time. Fox was reporting that the White House was still weighing its options over whether or not to use the B-2s as President Trump sent his tweet out or posted his Truth Social post. So as President Trump says, we've already carried out this attack. The planes are already out of Iranian airspace. It's totally done. Fordow's deader than disco. You had friendly media on TV saying, well, our good reporting says that the president is still weighing his options. And so they kept this tight. And they played it out very, very well. It seems to me, especially in retrospect, Trump made his mind on day 61. Day 60, well, we'll see. He kept saying, he was asked that, I think, at the Kennedy Center. What's going to happen in Iran? Well, we'll see. Stay tuned. Hope they make a deal. So this was the art of the deal. He did a good job. He managed to evade the suspicions even of his allies in politics and in the media. He was able to keep the team together, including standing right behind him, owning this decision. And he gave the Iranian government a carrot, an incentive. Do not push this any further. When Trump said everyone needs to leave Tehran, this was the key. It's just hitting me now. Trump said everyone needs to leave Tehran right now. Evacuate. He had people concerned that Trump was going to glass the capital of Iran. There was a really, really good piece written by my friend Ed Fazer on that. He was writing about just war theory and said, glassing Tehran, that would be horrible. That wouldn't fit just war theory. And, I'm thinking, I don't know that Trump's going to do that. But Trump, he kind of faked people out. He says, and now you could say, we didn't glass your capital. We didn't decapitate your government. We didn't do any of that. We did the thing that I've been campaigning on doing for 10 years. We took out your nuclear facility. Don't make me go further. I don't want you to go further by striking American bases. I don't want you to go further by launching a terror attack in the United States. And you really don't want me to go further against your cities or against your government. Let's just leave it as is. The time for peace is now. That's what Trump's after. The two things, Trump has poetic diction. The two statements that he capitalized in that post describing the operation. Bombs, and then some lines later, now is the time for peace. It's no accident. You guys got to get the two things that you need to take away. Bombs, peace. Pick. Because we got more of the former if you don't want to give us the latter. This is one of these events in the Trump administration where we could say, we are witnessing history. This is a turning point for the Trump administration, for the Middle East, for global politics, the kickoff of World War III, as people are always crowing about. We could be, and I don't know. I've called a lot of this, but right now I'm perfectly willing to admit I don't know whether we are watching major history taking place or whether no one's going to be talking about this in 2 weeks. And part of the reason I don't know that is it's up to the Iranians now. But President Trump has left them, even after dropping massive bunker buster bombs out of B-2 stealth bombers. Trump has left them a lot of opportunities to ramp down, save their government, back off. Whether they take that or not remains to be seen. I hope that I will not be with you any more later tonight. Go get some sleep. We'll see what tomorrow brings. If nothing, then catch you on the Michael Knowles Show on Monday. God bless.